Ti hei Māori ora, inga mana, inga reo, inga hau e whā, kia ora koutou katoa. I'm Rachel Maidment and I'm the Director of MFAT's Auckland office. And, you know, we're the last panel of the day before wrapping up, so we thought we'd just really bring the spark with 3 government officials, 4 plus me. We're so known for that, aren't we? But in this case, I think we are going to bring a bit of spark. First of all, we've got a slightly shortened half-an-hour session, so we're going to pack in as much as we can. But all 4 of us have been in the room today listening and learning. So we're not going to go with set prepared speeches. We've picked up a lot of things, and we're really going to get down into the nuts and bolts. And that is because I've got 2 very experienced crafters of the vase. And that we've got Jamie Thompson, who's the Manager of Trade Policy at New Zealand Customs. So Jamie has negotiated and advised on customs components of many of New Zealand's key free trade agreements and has led teams focused on border protection, drug trafficking and maritime security. So you've been building the vase, dealing with complexity and the odd broken shard. We've also got Dr. Bill Jolly, who's MPI's Chief Assurance Strategy Officer. So Bill leads MPI's strategies on global market access and multilateral engagement. He's previously managed MPI's imports and exports team and served as a trade and science counsellor in Washington DC and Brussels, and chaired FTA committees and led high-level international negotiations. I think you've been working quite hard on the India FTA lately, haven't you? So helping us develop our optionality. And then finally, we're not just crafting the vase, we've also got a super connector to business here by way of Daniel Taylor, who's NZTE's Head of Focus Customers. So Dan has held leadership roles across NZTE, including Head of Manufacturing. He's been our Trade Commissioner for the UK and Ireland and Consul General in Melbourne. Before joining NZTE, he worked in exporting fresh produce with NZA and Global Fruit, so a very distinguished panel. And let's get right into it. So we've heard a lot today from speakers about the shift from rules to power and the impact that it's having on our rules and norms. What are you seeing? How are you seeing this play out across your organisations and the companies that you deal with? Should we start with you, Dan?
Yeah, sure, thanks, Rachel. I'm not the policy guy. So what I wanted to do was bring the voice of business into the room, because all of the great work that happens at the officials level really starts to have the rubber hit the road once businesses are out there engaging on the big wide world. At New Zealand Trade and Enterprise, we work with about 6,000 New Zealand exporters, 1,000 of those quite intensively, and we survey them fairly regularly to understand what's going on, how are they feeling, what are they seeing. And there are some perennials that we see come through around sales challenges, demand generation, the difficulty of running a business from this side of the world. But what I think is really interesting is we have seen massive changes over the last 18 months around businesses starting to have to really take account of the geopolitical changes. It has not featured for most of our SMEs for the longest time. They haven't had to worry about it. It's been a little bit like a good rugby referee. The rules have been well understood, they've been applied, but at the end of the day, no one really noticed them. They are now being noticed, and it is causing a huge amount of confusion and uncertainty, I think. We've heard throughout the day that businesses crave certainty. That is absolutely the case. This period of uncertainty is meaning that decisions are being slowed down or not taken. We are seeing companies second guess themselves, which is a dangerous place to be, and they're delaying, expenditure that could help them grow because they're just not sure what lies ahead. So it does feel deeply, deeply uncertain, and the pathway out I don't think is clear.
Thanks, Dan. And just digging into that a little bit deeper. So obviously we've heard quite a bit about the primary sectors today. But definitely in terms of manufacturing, where you've got a lot of experience, we're starting to see the rubber hit the road. How is the manufacturing sector being impacted, and how are they perhaps a little more susceptible than other industries?
I think the complexity of manufacturing supply chains is really causing challenges now. What was a competitive advantage is now becoming a little bit of a noose, I guess, as people try and unpick what a really complex global supply chain means in the new environment. And the ability to to be flexible and exercise that optionality that we've heard a lot about today becomes harder for manufactured goods. They are more bespoke, they're more likely to be long-term contracts that people are thinking about, and the ability to move and flex is challenged in a way that perhaps a food and beverage good or a digital offering is less challenged.
We've talked about the importance of networks as well. Do you notice a difference with your manufacturers compared to, say, the SaaS community?
I think yes, we do, and I think the digital businesses are they're born global, and they realise that their competitors are international. They're not the person down the road, and so they naturally coalesce around opportunities more than certainly we see in the manufacturing space. They share problems and they share solutions. New Zealand is too small for our businesses to try and go it alone. It should be one of our big advantages, that ability to connect to like-mindeds. I think we can learn a lot from those really new and emerging sectors about how they think about taking on the world. Our more traditional sectors could certainly pick up a thing or two, I think.
Thank you. So we'll move down to Bill from MPI.
Thank you, and I agree with what Daniel says. Now, I'm from the Ministry for Primary Industries, and for those of you who don't know, we've got about 100 people directly involved in trade. One of the differences is we both represent and regulate industry. But more important, we also cost recover from them to do that job, and so we are very, very close and accountable with the sector. We judge success by economic parameters, and in fact our whole prioritisation model is based on return on investment. So we live and die on how well our industries are doing. The primary sectors contribute about 82% of New Zealand's merchandisable exports. 82%. It is the backbone of this country. It is how our country stayed competitive through COVID, and it is part of how we will develop and grow. So we agree the supply chains have not yet recovered from COVID. They're still more expensive, they're still slow, they're still complex. We're a long way from markets, and that does decrease our competitiveness. And so we're looking for solutions there. Protectionism is increasing. And it's not as though this hasn't been there all the time, but there's more opportunity. Nationalism and protectionism seems to go hand in hand, and countries are linking a whole lot more what we call non-tariff barriers to access. Now, there might be requirements to partner up with domestic industries so that you have to have a component of your business directly owned or functioning with another business, or it might be a reciprocity in trade, it might be delivery of cooperation. And we're up for all of that, because at the end of the day it is a relationship, it is a partnership. So geopolitics is a big factor. The world is going through a period of disruption, but disruption isn't necessarily a bad thing. I mean, disruption is actually full of opportunities. And I'm one of those sort of Pollyannas. I'm not just a half glass full person. I think it's overflowing with opportunities. And you know, the thing about uncertainty is you can react to it two ways. You can be paralyzed by it, or else you can actually grasp it and go out and look for those opportunities and develop it. And that's what we're encouraging our sectors to do, what we're trying to do, what the government's trying to do. You only have to look at the number of visits to the ASEAN region, our ministers and our senior execs, etc. I think there's been 42 countries visited, 42 visits of individuals to individual companies, just in countries, just in ASEAN. And so we are putting a lot of collective effort in there. So one thing that I did want to mention as well is the world is changing, yes, because of introduction of the US reciprocal trade tariffs and the 232s, the 201s, the 233s, etc. But at the same time, the world was starting to change and recognise food security as a big issue as well. And so Jamie and I were both involved in the IPEF negotiations for over a year of our life we won't get back. And countries like Japan, Singapore, Korea it was one of their driving motivations for the negotiations, secure food security. And so what we've seen just in the last week in the United States, price inflation, or the cost of meat, beef, has gone sky high, and we've just suddenly seen the tariffs relaxed in that area. But also in about another, I don't know, it was something over 300 lines. And so this dynamic is always going to be there.
Thank you. We'll head down to Jamie.
Thank you. What have we heard? I think it's the same message everyone's heard. I had confusion, I had uncertainty, but the one we've also heard from people was frustration. The simple question is, what do I need to do? What is the process I need to do? What does it mean for me? And unfortunately, the answer was, sorry, we don't know. You know, pick up before Deb made the comment about there's been 32 changes to the US tariffs. They've added 30 lines. Now, let's put it this way. We're in week 47 of the year. And for the first 4 of those, we didn't have a President Trump. So in 43 weeks, there's been 32 changes. That's the first part of confusion. The second, I'm going to read a brief thing for you here. This is from the US Customs and Border Protection notice about the latest changes to tariffs. See if you can note the thing that's a little bit strange here. The November 14, 2025 executive order will be effective from November 13, 2025. Maybe it was just me, but that sort of didn't quite seem easy to use. So that's the sort of issues that people are dealing with. I can't blame them for being frustrated and confused. We are.
So in this world that is obviously more confusing and frustrating, Bill has already talked a little bit about how there are risks but also opportunities. I'm a Mandarin speaker. We all know the word weiji, risk and opportunity. Wherein lies the risks, and also where could there be some silver linings from your perspective, from your agencies?
I'm going to start with the opportunities. I think New Zealand businesses are incredibly innovative and reactive. I think the confusion that gets created does absolutely create opportunity, and that ability to move at pace and to capture those changing dynamics is something that New Zealand businesses should be proud of and should be standing on. I also think we do relationships well when we commit the time and effort. When there is disruption, when there is confusion, it's a very human instinct, I think, to fall back on relationships and leverage off trust. And I don't think we can underestimate the impact that can have. Challenges, New Zealand's a nation of not even really SMEs. We're a nation of small businesses. And I think what we're seeing at the moment is the optionality that does exist feels like it comes with higher risk. It feels like decisions are more one way than perhaps they were previously. And so the decisions that are being made feel a little bit more final, and I think that is leading to people perhaps being a little bit hesitant to act, and I think that's an ongoing risk.
Thank you. And if we go back to looking at how we make the vase, so Bill, you talked a little bit earlier about how there could be some opportunities as well in terms of crafting that trade architecture and also different things that are happening in the world of NTBs. What are some practical nuts and bolts areas where you think we could use our creative policy making to make a difference?
Thanks. I'll start with the NTBs because they are the silent costs, if you like, of doing business. NTBs probably cost businesses far more than tariffs do. Furthermore, they restrict the ability to do business. So a lot of our energy goes into finding constructive solutions. In fact, where you get a solution to an NTB, it's basically the new tariff rent. It's tariff preference. And so it's worth huge. Now, one of the opportunities we've got is the US government is actually going out there and hammering NTBs throughout the world. And there's a real opportunity for us to coattail as well. People are having to rewrite their legislation. And we heard this from panellists earlier in the day. It's very hard to unwind these things because it's contained in legislation. If they're rewriting legislation, they don't normally want to just make it exclusive to one country. And so there's a real opportunity for us to get in there and with our relationships. I mean, we have fantastic relationships. Look at ASEAN in the room today. I mean, our closest neighbours, some of our biggest trading partners, our longest relationships, and we work very, very closely together. We've got multiple trade agreements with them, and we work very closely. So here's a chance for us to partner up, to look at how we can redesign the world, look at areas where the NTBs were having the greatest effect on us, get rid of them. Now the risks, that's something I did want to deal with. And when we started doing our modelling this time last year, like Fonterra, it wasn't just on what's the risk of access to the US. It was US access to our traditional markets. And you look at ASEAN again, one of our largest markets, we've had competitive advantage because of the trade architecture. That was tariff advantage and non-tariff advantage, and because they're close. Now the US is going to have the same tariff advantage. They're possibly going to have a greater non-tariff barrier advantage, and possibly even negotiate other preferential conditions of trade. So we have a real threat there that we need to work on, and we need to work on it with holding our international architecture, our agreements to account, making sure they are enforceable, making sure our relationships are strong, and looking after our trading partners when they want to trade to us, or in how we work in strategic alliances internationally.
Thank you. And Jamie, customs. Obviously, this is where a lot of the issues arise, and this is where a lot of SMEs first come across different problems. We've talked about, and this really resonates with me in the MFAT Auckland office, supply chains now. It's almost like there needs to be a support group for supply chain specialists. But can you really take us back to the basics in terms of a risk for the companies that you're seeing that come across your door?
Sort of.
For example, a t-shirt manufacturer.
For example, hypothetically. The risk that I see is that tariffs has sucked all the oxygen out of the discussion, and they have received so much attention and so much media and so much focus, and they are a significant aspect. However, there are a number of other quote initiatives unquote that the Trump administration has undertaken that have just as bigger, if not bigger, impact on traders. They've introduced port fees, which were introduced lower than deferred, but that was going to add an extra charge on any Chinese built, owned or operated vessel, and that charge was significant. It was tens of thousands, if not millions of dollars per shipment, per vessel, per US port visit, and that was going to be charged on to those who put containers on. They've looked at, sorry, my notes here, they've signed out of an agreement to reduce emissions on vessels. And the biggest one probably is the elimination of de minimis. This is something that is going to have a huge impact on people who used to have their goods into the US tariff-free without having to worry about paperwork. They now have to verify the proof of do a proof of origin, country of origin, for every single thing they do. Now, if you think as a hypothetical example, you've got some fella with some sort of arty craft designer place in Cuba Street in Wellington who prints t-shirts and sends them off around the globe with some nice little design on them. Now, he would casually travel down to the warehouse or Kmart or something, pick up a pack of 50 t-shirts, take them back to Cuba Street, slap his design on them, send them overseas. No problems. However, if that t-shirt now goes to the US, he has to declare the country of origin according to the US rules of origin. Under US rules of origin, that t-shirt is not a New Zealand good. That t-shirt will be wherever it was made. So if it was made in Vietnam and then imported into New Zealand and then sent to the US, that is a Vietnamese good that is subject to Vietnamese tariff rates. And that is a significant issue, and that trader is responsible for that tariff. So those are little bits and pieces that have gone largely under the radar that are going to have a significant impediment. If you don't think there was many US goods that were entered under the de minimis, it was about 2 billion last year, shipments. So that's 2 billion shipments that used to get in paper-free, no charge, etc., are now having to submit paperwork for. So I think it's the little things that have sailed under the wind, the port fees, the de minimis, etc., are going to have just as significant impact as the tariffs.
We're actually heading into the last 5 minutes, so I guess if the panel had a t-shirt printed, it would say "We're government and we're here to help." For the last few minutes before we, I think, pass to the audience for a couple of quick questions, what ways are your agencies looking to assist? And perhaps we'll kick it off down the end with you, Jamie.
Yeah, those terrifying words, I'm from the government, I'm here to help. Even worse is I'm from customs and I'm here to help. So, yeah, that's everyone wants to hear that. Closely followed by, can you come into this room with me? But anyway, we won't dwell on that. Strange as it may seem, we do want to help. I'm manager of the Trade Policy Group. One of our jobs is to work with traders, is to work with interested parties and to solve problems. So I, as manager, I get to say this, my team are here to help. And I've got one of them sitting here who I've threatened to give out her business cards to everyone and just say, feel free to phone 24/7, it's okay. But no, we actually, MFAT knows how to find me, unfortunately. So if you ever need help with a customs-related issue, if you can get in touch with your local friendly MFAT staff member, they'll give you my contact details and I'll give you somebody else's details. And we are actually here to help you solve your FTA issues.
I think, customs actually do have helplines, don't they? And they are incredibly helpful. And I think, in the world that we're heading into, are you finding that you're having to give more bespoke advice?
It's all bespoke. Seeing as the rule that gets very specific very quickly and very situation specific, generic advice is very dangerous. So that's why I'm making the offer to work one-on-one with people, is because for the advice to be effective, trustworthy and usable, it must be bespoke.
Thanks. Bill?
So we also have a MPI help, export help, and they've got a lot of material on their website, and they also will work one-on-one just for those. But I suppose it comes down to the role of government. We do not do commerce. We're enablers. We want to hear about problems. We want to hear about, in our area, we want to hear about sector problems, the big issues, because we're trying to solve those first and foremost. You can't solve all of the world's problems. And so we do put it through a matrix of return on investment. We work closely in our prioritisation with the sectors, looking at what's causing them the biggest grief, whether it's an opportunity, whether it's new market, whether it's a threat to access, or whether it's a compliance cost. If you remove $10 million of compliance costs, that goes straight on the bottom line of a company. It's gold, and especially for the low margin companies. So we are there to look at enabling. We are there to reduce the non-tariff barriers. We work, we emphasise cooperation, connection, dialogue and understanding, those Aotearoa principles, if you like, of how we do business, how we value business, etc. And we're here for the long term. We're not here just for the transactional. The transactional stuff, it's got to fall off the table sometimes, or commerce has to do commerce, but we're there to try and enable it, to give that certainty back, to provide that platform for companies to have some certainty and invest in the business and the markets.
And I think from an NZTE perspective, our role is one of insight and connectivity. the gentleman to my left and you and your team, Rachel, do the hard mahi to solve those problems bespoke. I think NZTE's role is helping both business and the rest of government understand the ecosystem that businesses are working in, particularly in that SME space where they perhaps don't either have the time or the inclination to do that themselves.
Thank you. So I think we've got time for 2 quick questions, and then we're going to have a video from Vangelis Vitalis, and he'll be able to talk about sort of the MFAT perspective in terms of our plan and approach.
And thank you. And I just wonder that to get the reciprocal tariff rate, the goods should be meet origin criteria, some kind like that. So, in your will, what is origin criteria for New Zealand and USA? And do you need to negotiate the item line by line for origin criteria, or it have to be 100% made from New Zealand that can get the preferential tariff? I mean, reciprocal tariff rate. Or it can be regional value content, does it mean an ASEAN and New Zealand, some kind like that, or anything else, in your view? Thank you.
The answer is the US, we don't have a trade agreement with the US, so we don't have the line by line. The US operates a substantial transformation requirement, and they are the sole determinant of what substantial transformation is. So you are solely in their hands.
Thank you. That was quite a complicated question, and I'm wondering, Blanche, where are our gifts? Was that a question from Blanche?
Thank you. If we were successful in allowing that infrastructure to happen, I know that these programs and helplines, I use them every day. Actually, I was very privileged to have Traco from Customs deal with Romania for me just last night at 9:30 to clear something through. But is there a willingness to have partnerships with collectives in regional areas that allow us to streamline the way that our people need advice and services? Because I know, as somebody who has had to navigate those advice and services over the years, it's if you're an SME, it's not always easy to understand, click into this and move into that, and then you get shifted on to this person. And a great example was that we email you and you'll email somebody else, and then it takes about a week to actually land and answer the question that needs to be addressed. Is there some sort of standard that we would approach you as a collective for us to work with you directly rather than going through the system if it was collectively under, case in point, a collective of primary producers in honey, fruit and coffee. We all operate under the same, animal products, health certificates, MPI will have certain criteria, NZTE, it'll be similar business criteria in terms of ROI and market presence and consumer surveys. Is there a standard or a focus to be more regional and more intentional in your engagement with groups such as our proposed structure?
Well, I'll start off. From an MPI point of view, I mentioned at the start, we also we regulate and represent. And so a lot of the issues you talk about are covered by regulations, and so you already have relationships with our verifiers, our certifiers, etc., and that's the first point of call. The Export Help Desk summarizes a lot of that material in very useful guides for by commodity, and the different commodities have different regulations. So the animal products are well regulated because they're the whipping boy of international trade, whereas plant products are more, usually have easier access, except for phytosanitary certificates. So that's your first 2 points of call. That Exporter Help Desk also has a form where you can actually submit a detailed series of questions on behalf of a sector, etc., and we're very keen to hear that. We've also got a number of people directly and a unit directly involved in Māori business, and we are working collectively to try and proactively get ahead to help and promote Māori business. So again, working through those people. There's a meeting, I think, tomorrow or the next day, and I can't remember, it's Auckland, I think it is Auckland, where some of my colleagues will be there as well. But yeah, please utilise those processes first, and then go through also your sector organisations, because some of you are large enough to be represented in the sector organisations as well. Seafood is a great case in point, but meat and dairy as well.
Love to work with you. Simple as that. I'm happy for our team to work with individuals, with groups, with collectives, with communes, with basically vans full of people, bring a bus in. I don't really give much doubt about that. We'll work with anyone, anytime, anywhere. So I'll see you after this. I'll give you a card, and Emily will be thrilled to work with you for however long it takes.
And I think from an NZTE perspective, our role is to support exporters, whatever that might look like. Historically, that's been at the individual firm level, but that doesn't mean that has to be the way going forward. We have seen great examples of like-minded companies getting together and doing great stuff internationally.
Thank you, and thank you to my panel. I think this has really kind of summed up part of the day in that we've got lots of challenges ahead. We've got a lot of fog to navigate through, but we're small and we're connected, and that's going to be one of our advantages. And everybody can just call the person from Jamie's team whenever they've got an issue, 24/7. Thank you.